In the 7th year of my marriage to Oliver, I was diagnosed with a terminal illness, late-stage stomach cancer, with no cure in sight, but I didn't dare tell him, afraid it would sadden him, and even more so, afraid that it would break him down. Before I die, I wanted to visit the place where we first met one last time, as a farewell trip. However, the night before we were supposed to leave, he suddenly said he had to go on a business trip, something urgent. I felt disappointed but still obediently stayed home, waiting for him to return. But that very night, I accidentally clicked into a live stream and saw Oliver on camera, his head lowered, kissing a young, beautiful girl in front of him. I didn't cry or make a scene. I packed my things and set off on the trip alone. This time, I wanted to face death by myself. I was planning the next month's travel itinerary when I discovered Oliver was cheating. In the final stages of stomach cancer, I knew I didn't have long to live, so I wanted to spend my remaining time creating the best memories with Oliver. The itinerary filled several pages, my arms sore from writing so much. I opened my phone, planning to relax by watching some short videos. But, by chance, I accidentally clicked into a live stream. There he was, Oliver, who said he was out of town on an urgent business trip, now in front of the camera, his head lowered, kissing a young, beautiful girl. The comments flew across the screen, those long legs. That broad back. That narrow waist. He looks like he's in great shape. Ah, such a hot kiss. This couple looks perfect together. This world's a giant stage, and we're just NPCs. You can't even watch a travel live stream without stumbling upon the leads kissing. Netizens were all swooning over it. The handsome man and beautiful woman were indeed eye-catching, and the intensity of their kiss made it feel like one could drown in it. I stared at the live stream in disbelief. How could the man in the video possibly be Oliver? But I knew his silhouette all too well. And as the video became clearer, that familiar profile unchanged from the moment I first fell in love with him confirmed it was him. My Oliver, the one whose eyes were once full of me. How could he have cheated? The live streamer had accidentally caught them at first, but seeing the surge in viewers, they bravely moved closer, capturing an even clearer shot. As the high-definition camera zoomed in, Oliver quickly realized something was off. He's always hated being photographed. In our 7 years of marriage, apart from our wedding photos, we had barely any pictures together, let alone videos like this. Just like now, his brow furrowed, and he looked slightly annoyed. But before he could react, the young woman in his arms spoke first. Oliver, someone's filming us. I want more people to know about our relationship. The girl was young, beautiful, with a bit of a playful tone to her voice. Oliver looked down at her, indulgently tapping her nose with his finger. Okay, whatever you say. To please her, Oliver wrapped his arm around her waist and smiled at the camera. The live stream comments went wild again, saying his smile was heart-melting, making people weak in the knees. The girl in his arms blushed, leaning into him even more, looking utterly sweet and delicate. In that moment, I snapped the pen in my hand. The sharp edge dug into my skin, blood dripping everywhere, but I didn't feel any pain. It was as if I was numb, my eyes still locked on the live stream. In the video, the streamer approached them, smiling as they asked, "Hello, are you two a couple? You look perfect together." Oliver glanced down at the girl in his arms. She shyly burrowed into his chest, making his smile even more affectionate. He even kissed her forehead. "Yes, she's my little girlfriend," Oliver said, emphasizing the word little with a tone full of affection. Even the streamer commented on how sweet they were. "Are you here on vacation?" the streamer asked, continuing the conversation. The girl, still blushing, finally peeked out from his arms and softly replied, "I saw how beautiful this place is, so I begged him to take me here." She paused, then pulled out a small notebook from her bag. As she flipped it open, it revealed a detailed travel plan for the location, meticulously crafted. "He's really busy, but as soon as I told him I wanted to come, he made the itinerary and brought me here without hesitation." The rest of her words became blurry to me. Maybe it was because I recognized that notebook. I recognized the handwriting, and suddenly, my mind went blank. The place they were visiting was a popular tourist spot in another city. I had wanted to go there too. I had written several pages of plans for it, but before I could put those plans into action, I was diagnosed with late-stage stomach cancer. Knowing that I was going to die was not an easy feeling. With little time left, I had wanted to go to Star City with Oliver, the place where we first met, surrounded by vast fields of flowers. I'm someone who values rituals. From Star City, I wanted to say my final goodbye to him there. That's why the notebook filled with plans for other tourist spots had been casually left behind at home. I never expected Oliver would take it, using my plans to travel with another girl. I stared at the live stream, watching their fingers intertwined, feeling an overwhelming sense of absurdity. 7 years of marriage. We had met in college, dated for 3 years, and got married right after graduation. All our friends said I was lucky to have such a caring husband. But whenever Oliver heard this, he would always wrap his arm around my waist and gently correct them. He'd say, "I'm the lucky one. Having Miranda is my greatest fortune." But this man. In the 7th year of our marriage, while I was battling a terminal illness, he chose to cheat. I called Oliver directly. On the live stream, Oliver, spurred on by the host, was about to share their love story with the camera. But when he heard that familiar ringtone, his body stiffened, and his expression turned somewhat unnatural. He shook his head at the young girl and then turned away from the camera to answer the call a short distance away. Curious, the girl left standing there explained, "He's really busy with work, but he pushed everything aside for me, and look, another work call." Though she said that, the smile on her face clearly faded. When the call connected, I watched Oliver's silhouette in the live stream as he suppressed his emotions and said, "Is work going well?" He replied with a low "uh-huh," deliberately lowering his voice. "Work is busy. There's a big project. I probably won't have time to call you in the next few days. Just rest at home, and I'll take you on a trip next month, okay?" His tone was still the same, filled with a gentle indulgence I once thought was exclusively for me. In the end, I was just being delusional. I gripped my phone tightly, watching the vibrant, youthful girl on the screen. Her energy was something I had completely lost. Perhaps it was because I was facing death, but this time I managed to stay remarkably calm, even when I used to be easily irritated. "Oliver, come home." My voice was very calm, as if it were still water, stirring no ripples. He was taken aback but quickly rejected me without thinking. "Miranda, this job is really important. Please listen to me. I'll be home in a week, then I'll take you to Star City, okay?" "No," I refused decisively, stubbornly wanting him to come back. "You're always so busy with work. Can't you just push things aside for me this once?" If he couldn't, then why was he able to give up work for another girl and travel with her? Wasn't I worth it? Or was it just his nature, and I had been deceived all these years because he played his part so well? "Oliver, I didn't even know what I wanted to say." Before I could finish, the young girl turned and waved her hand. Oliver noticed her gaze and hurriedly said, "Don't mess around. I told you this work is very important. There's a crucial meeting later, and I'll call you tonight." After saying that, he hung up the phone without a moment's hesitation. I watched as he turned around and ran straight toward that girl. She pouted, looking somewhat displeased. "Oliver, you promised to focus on our trip this time." Oliver smiled indulgently and ruffled her hair, pulling her into his arms. "Okay, I'll focus on you. I promise not to take any more calls." Upon hearing this, the girl finally smiled happily, linking her arm with his as they walked away. Watching Oliver gradually disappear from the live stream, this man who had matured so much after our marriage, who once promised to be with me for a lifetime, ultimately broke that promise. I sat in my room, feeling desolate throughout the night. I picked up the travel guide repeatedly, setting it down again, wanting to tear it up but unable to bring myself to do so. In the end, I opened my suitcase that I had prepared earlier, took out all of Oliver's belongings, and set off for Star City alone. This journey towards death was, after all, my personal destination. I found a homestay in Star City run by an elderly couple who had no children. They had a dog named Buddy. Buddy was chubby and wagged his tail, spinning in circles when he first saw me. The old woman said Buddy was a glutton, like a child, not at all shy. He sensed that I had snacks in my bag and came over to be cute. I had always wanted a pet, but Oliver didn't like them and was slightly allergic to fur, so it never worked out. Fortunately, now I didn't have to consider him anymore. I could enjoy what I liked freely. I put the beef jerky I had brought into Buddy's bowl, and he barked happily, rubbing against my pants leg in delight. The homestay was somewhat secluded, so aside from me, there were no other guests. But the old couple welcomed me with warmth. They prepared a large spread of dishes, saying it was to welcome me. Originally, I felt a bit sad, haunted by unshakable memories. But when I sat at the dining table, watching the elderly couple enthusiastically introduce local specialties, their white hair still full of life, their passion for living lifted my spirits. The old man loved making tea and would often sit on a reclining chair in the yard. But the old woman was impatient, never willing to slowly savor it with him. It wasn't until I came that I patiently accompanied him for an afternoon, and he happily introduced me to his prized tea leaves. The old woman loved to cook, her skilled hands flying across the counter, quickly preparing a feast. I followed her into the kitchen, but most of what I made turned out to be disastrous. She looked at the blackened mass I produced, frowned in silence for a long time, and finally asked me, "Dear, does your husband cook at home?" I shook my head. During the years with Oliver, both of our careers had been busy, so we always chose to hire someone to cook and clean for us, which left me with terrible cooking skills. Oliver once mentioned that he wanted me to learn how to cook, saying that the wives of his other male friends in our circle could all showcase impressive culinary skills while he could only watch enviously. But I hated cooking because I always ended up smelling like smoke and oil, which was unbearable. So, he chose to eat the meals prepared by other girls. The power of big data is incredible. I stumbled upon Oliver and that girl in a live stream, and the next morning, I found her account on my feed. The girl's name is Grace. She just graduated from college and is at a vibrant, blossoming age. Her profile is mostly filled with various videos showing off her relationship. Perhaps Oliver was afraid I would find out, so there were hardly any videos showing his face, but if you looked closely, you could still find traces. Whether it was matching belts, the watch he wore, or his familiar silhouette, they were all too recognizable. Aside from the relationship videos, most of the content consisted of cooking vlogs. Grace seemed to love cooking. She had a knack for it just like the old woman, creating dishes that looked and smelled amazing, all beautifully arranged in a 9-grid layout. She would caption her posts with, "My boyfriend loves my cooking, and I want to cook for him for a lifetime," and that time was just a year ago. So this husband, who had never argued with me since our marriage and whom I thought we shared a deep bond, had in fact cheated on me a year ago, indulging in meals made by another girl. Seeing that I suddenly looked a bit sad, the old woman gently patted my back, speaking in a tone similar to that of comforting a child. "Don't be sad, dear. Grandma will make you something delicious." After saying this, she turned and shouted to the old man, who was leisurely sipping tea in the yard, "Old man, hurry up and help. Make something nice for the girl." The old man jumped in surprise, quickly putting down his teacup and running in, not forgetting to push me out of the kitchen with a cheerful smile. "Go drink tea in the yard, your meal will be ready soon." Then he rolled up his sleeves and began assisting the old woman. I stood at the kitchen door, watching their seamless cooperation. Such harmony could only come from decades of companionship. I used to think it was a romantic journey from school uniforms to wedding dresses, from first loves to old age. So when I met Oliver, we achieved the former, but ultimately, we could not realize the latter. Yet it was still a romantic affair. Just like the old couple, even with their hair now white, they remained as affectionate as ever. I tucked away all my bitterness and suddenly felt that being able to live with such a loving couple before my death was like a little sweetness granted to me by the heavens in my painful concluding chapter. A little sweetness was enough. I didn't want to suffer any longer. I took a deep breath and waved to the old couple in the kitchen. "Then I'll go set the table while we wait for dinner." I stayed at this homestay for quite a few days. With my phone turned off, I was free from the turmoil of the outside world, and even time seemed to slow down. The travel guides I had originally gathered were filled with memories of first encounters and knowledge about local popular spots, memories belonging to couples without betrayal. But now that my relationship had fallen apart, those places I had longed to visit were no longer suitable for me to explore alone. The old woman told me that many of those places were actually man-made attractions and not particularly impressive. Star City is built against the mountains, and many of the forests are incredibly beautiful, things that outsiders don't know about. Let Grandma tell you all about it. With a warm smile, the old woman pulled out a chair and began sharing the beauty of the area with me. Especially at this time of year, the old woman led me up the mountain to pick mushrooms. I was initially worried about her age and mobility, but in the end, I found myself carrying the basket behind her, nearly out of breath, while she moved nimbly ahead. I realized I had underestimated her, but I fell in love with mushroom picking. Before my body deteriorated completely, I wanted to see the beautiful scenery. When the old woman couldn't accompany me, Buddy would wag his tail and join me up the mountain. A person and a dog frolicked along the mountain paths. Buddy was quite the charmer. As long as I gave him some beef jerky, he would happily help me carry the basket, adorably obedient. A week passed, and I even forgot about those distressing matters. Except for the occasional sharp pain in my abdomen late at night, which grew more intense, making it hard for me to sleep through the night. So when I returned to the homestay after picking mushrooms, opening the door and seeing Oliver standing there, I was momentarily stunned. "Miranda, why can't I reach you on your phone? For more than a week, I called you every day, but your phone was always off. Didn't you know I'd be worried? I know you really wanted to come to Star City, but I still have work. I promised to take you next month. Miranda, do you really have to throw a tantrum and run away by yourself?" As soon as Oliver saw me, anger flickered across his features, and he immediately scolded me in front of the old woman. Before I could say anything, the old woman rushed over. "You, as her husband, should ask how she's been these past few days instead of scolding her right away." Oliver paused for a moment, perhaps feeling some respect for the elderly woman before him with her head full of silver hair. "She ran away without a word, and I'm just worried about her," I scoffed softly. The images I had seen in the live stream were still haunting me. Especially every night when the pain in my body kept me awake, those images became clearer and clearer. Before, it was only physical pain. As long as I thought of the love we shared, it was enough to bring comfort. But now my body hurt, and my heart hurt even more. I gently shook my head at the old woman, then walked up to him. "I told you to come back, but you refused. So what's wrong with me coming to Star City on my own?" My voice was cold, something I had never experienced before. Oliver's eyes flickered with a momentary panic. He stared deeply into my eyes, not knowing for how long. But when he didn't see any anger, Oliver secretly let out a sigh of relief, straightened his back unconsciously, and began to lecture me. "Even if you want to come by yourself, you shouldn't turn off your phone. What if you run into bad people?" "Run into bad people?" I looked at Oliver and suddenly couldn't help but laugh. "True, maybe while you were away on a business trip, one night as I was sleeping, I could have encountered some bad people and possibly even lost my life, right? At that time, he would be sleeping next to another woman, tangled up together." Oliver seemed to follow my train of thought, recalling that scene, his face turning pale, glancing at me suspiciously multiple times but never showing any anger. I was someone who was usually impatient. If it were before, when I was in good health, I would have made a scene at this point. But now, I reacted calmly, not in a state of hysteria. Disappointment had reached its peak. I could no longer feel desperate, not to mention that I had already gone through even more despair. Oliver seemed to want to say something else, but suddenly, the phone he was holding lit up for a moment, and then the ringtone rang out. Perhaps feeling a bit angry, he didn't even see who was calling and carelessly dialed the number in front of me, so Grace's voice reached my ears just like that. Oliver, the sweet, delicate voice of the girl made my bones feel weak. In an instant, Oliver looked flustered, quickly covering the phone and explaining to me, "This is a new assistant we hired at the company. His attempt to deny it was as obvious as the sun in the sky, but I really didn't have the energy to argue with him. After all, I didn't want to hear him lie in front of me because it was truly an ugly sight. But I couldn't control myself. So after entering the kitchen, I immediately turned around and came back to the corner. At that moment, Oliver was the only one in the yard. He stood in the corner, looking around to make sure no one was there, then deliberately lowered his voice. "Grace, is what you said true?" I couldn't hear the voice on the other end of the line, but I could feel Oliver's shock. I didn't know what had happened, and the call was quickly hung up. Oliver hurriedly walked towards me. I took a deep breath, pretending I was really going out, and then we bumped into each other. As soon as he saw me, he wanted to pull me along, saying, "Come back home with me first. If you still want to travel, then we." But I didn't even wait for him to finish and shook off his hand. "Oliver, I don't want to go home." I said just that, and Oliver stood there in silence for a moment, surprisingly not insisting any further. Instead, he said to me, "Then just stay here and don't turn off your phone. There's been an issue at the company, and I have to fly back right away. If all goes well, I'll be back the day after tomorrow." After saying that, he turned and walked out, his movements very quick and decisive. And the so-called company issue was simply that girl named Grace calling him. I watched his figure gradually disappear from my sight. Originally, the old lady who had returned to her room came out again and gently patted my shoulder. "Nuan Nuan, I can see that you have feelings for him. How did it turn into this?" Having lived for decades, the old lady could see through things at a glance. I shook my head at her, forcing a smile that felt somewhat strained, because people's hearts are really hard to see through. Oliver's appearance ruined all my good feelings. In this past week, my previously sad emotions had finally improved, but they became difficult again with his arrival. He came hurriedly and left hurriedly, all of which told me, "Look, Miranda, you're useless. You're almost dead, and Oliver is still cheating." It's quite frustrating, isn't it? So when I found out I was pregnant, I felt like the already collapsing sky had collapsed once more. After Oliver left, the old lady noticed my bad mood and hurriedly pulled the old man to prepare a table full of food, but this time I couldn't eat 2 bites before throwing everything up. It didn't really matter, after all, it was late-stage stomach cancer, so experiencing some vomiting was normal. Not to mention that just 2 nights ago, I had vomited blood. But afraid that the old man and woman would find out, I spent the whole night squatting in the bathroom washing the sheets, feeling dizzy, as if I could die at any moment. However, the old lady was very worried and hurriedly had the old man ride a tricycle to take me to the health center in town. After briefly describing my condition to the doctor, and combined with the fact that my period hadn't come for more than a month, I bought a pregnancy test and confirmed that I was indeed pregnant. I gently placed my hand on my flat abdomen. At a time when I felt like I was dying, a small life had appeared here, a continuation of my life. Unfortunately, I was destined not to give birth. With late-stage stomach cancer, the doctor said I wouldn't live long. Nowadays, I couldn't sleep at night due to pain, and I had secretly contacted my attending physician several times. The attending physician didn't give a definite time frame but hinted that it wouldn't be long. I wouldn't last long enough for this child to grow, not to mention his father had fallen in love with another woman. Giving birth to him would only be another tragedy. Before I could even think about the child's future, Oliver came again. Not just him, but Grace too. Oliver's expression looked a bit unnatural, with a lot of guilt. "Miranda, Grace is my new assistant. Her work ability is quite good. Since you want to travel to Xingqing, I'm worried about you being alone, but work is important, so I brought my work here to find you. Grace can help me solve some things too, so I brought her along." Oliver rambled on and on about a lot of things, but I didn't listen and walked straight up to Grace. This girl who had just graduated from university exuded an aura of youth, and her eyes held an unmistakable sense of provocation and smugness as she looked at me. She thought she was hiding it well, not realizing that I had experienced youthful arrogance myself in the past. Why are you staring at me?" Grace felt a bit uncomfortable under my gaze, and her eyes frequently darted toward Oliver. I didn't speak, I simply slowly raised my hand. Miranda, what are you doing? Oliver rushed over in a flash, grabbing my wrist directly, his eyes filled with reproach. Miranda, I already said it's for work. What are you doing? Why do you always want to hit someone? Grace also began to tear up, her eyes red and filled with grievance. Miranda, if you don't like me, I can leave. Or if you hate me and want to slap me, go ahead. Oliver turned to her. What do you mean slap? You haven't done anything wrong, why would you need to be hit? But Miranda seems to dislike me. Grace's voice sounded wronged, and tears the size of beans fell down her cheeks, which was quite miraculous, she could cry just like that. I tried to rub my eyes, but no tears came out, they felt very dry. Oliver turned to me again. Miranda, don't bully the little girl, you. How am I bullying her? I directly interrupted Oliver, then in front of him, I slowly let my hand fall onto Grace's hair. She had a fallen leaf stuck in her hair, and I took the leaf off, crushed it in my palm. Helping her get rid of a leaf is bullying? There was a moment of awkwardness on Oliver's face, quickly followed by guilt. That's not what I meant, I was just afraid you wouldn't like Grace. Why would I not like her? I smiled and said, a pretty girl with decent values? Of course I like her. It's not like she's committing a crime or shamelessly trying to be someone's mistress, so why be afraid of being disliked? As I spoke, Grace's expression grew increasingly ugly. I continued smiling and asked, Grace, do you think I'm right? Of course, she didn't answer my question. After all, a mistress who knows her guilt is most aware of her own identity. Some words are ultimately hard to utter and can only be swallowed down. I didn't welcome Oliver's arrival, but the guest house wasn't mine. My grandparents needed to do business, and the more guests at the guest house, the more money they could earn to support themselves in old age. Oliver originally said he wanted to sleep in the same room as me. But I pointed to the stuffed animals on the bed and decisively refused him. Grandpa and Grandma are worried that I might be scared sleeping alone, so they gave me all the stuffed toys from home. Now the bed is full, and there's no space left for you. In the past, Oliver would have insisted, even looking a bit aggrieved, then holding my hand tightly and refusing to leave. He would say, those toys can only keep you company for a while, only I can be with you forever. But the current Oliver just stood there hesitantly, glancing over at Grace's room not far away, and nodded silently. Since you want to sleep alone, I'll stay next door. It didn't matter, he just shouldn't come to my room because there was no space left. However, at night when I was trying to sleep, my body started hurting again. Just as I finally settled on the bed, a wave of nausea hit me, and I almost collapsed in the bathroom. I didn't know if it was the baby in my belly stirring or the torment from the stomach cancer. In any case, I felt uncomfortable all night and couldn't sleep. But the tea my grandpa brewed smelled wonderful, and I originally planned to go to the living room to get some. Just as I opened the door, I happened to see the two of them standing in the yard. Oliver was wearing thin pajamas, and Grace stood in front of him, slightly on her tiptoes, her hands around Oliver's neck, leaning in to kiss his cheek. Oliver, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have to tolerate her. Oliver, who had been so calm and heavy in front of me, at that moment resembled a love-struck fool, holding the young girl around the waist and softly coaxing. I told you not to come, but you insisted on following me. If it weren't for your discomfort, I wouldn't let you act like this. The young girl smiled sweetly, but her words were anything but sweet. She said, I just wanted to see what your wife looks like, I wanted to know why you like me. I'm afraid you're just after a moment's novelty, but I really love you. Love? All I saw was shamelessness. And when did Oliver, the husband who once loved me deeply, disappear? I stared intently at the two of them hugging, unable to hear what they continued to say. My stomach churned, and I could only cover my mouth and rush back into the room, vomiting up a lot of dark brown stuff. I pulled out my phone to check, it should be blood. Yeah, the illness had worsened, and I felt pretty bad. My heart felt even worse. So I made a decision, a not so good decision. Grace seemed to enjoy the thrill of secretly flirting in front of me. Many times she thought I wasn't paying attention, sneakily linking her hand with Oliver's, or standing on her tiptoes to kiss him on the face. Oliver was so startled that he quickly pushed her away, nervously staring at my back. I pretended not to see and lifted my head to glance at the cameras in the public areas of the guest house, including several in the hallway. These things would always come in handy. After all, everyone should pay the price for their actions, but Grace coming over probably wasn't just for the thrill. She wanted to provoke me. So she would intentionally or unintentionally provoke me, or in front of Oliver, show her big watery eyes along with an expression that seemed to say she was being bullied. Just like now, I was feeling very uncomfortable in my stomach, and the delicious food my grandma made was hard to swallow. I wanted to eat some sour tangerines, and my grandpa went to town early in the morning to buy some for me. But before I could eat even one, Grace saw it. The young girl, acting all coy and cute, pleaded with my grandpa for food. My grandparents were good people. If they were unaware, they might actually like Grace and happily share the tangerines with her. But unfortunately, they could see the surveillance footage, seeing the two of them embracing late at night. So my grandpa ignored Grace directly. I also didn't want to deal with her. After taking the tangerines from my grandpa, I moved a chair and lay down in the yard. Grace came over again and pointed at the tangerines in my hand, asking, "Miranda, I've been craving something sour lately. Do you think you could let me have one of those tangerines?" Sour? My hand paused while peeling the tangerine, and some not-so-good thoughts surged in my mind. Grace, is she also pregnant? I couldn't help but glance at my abdomen, still showing no signs of movement. I couldn't even feel the existence of this child. I suddenly felt relieved, grateful that this child was destined not to be born. This way, we could leave together without worrying about the so-called biological father after he was born. I would go all out to care for another biological child, neglecting my own. My child would be pitiful enough without a mother. There shouldn't be a biased father either. If this world wouldn't be kind to him, it's better he didn't come at all. As my thoughts settled, I looked up at Grace in front of me, and I noticed a hint of pride in her eyes. In fact, from the moment we first met, she had been deliberately flaunting herself, subtly hinting at me in various ways. I pretended not to understand, not wanting to break this rare peace. But now that the hints had reached this point, it seemed she really intended to tear off the facade, and I suddenly felt very bored. But the tangerines in my hand were given to me by my grandpa. They belonged solely to me. So I shook my head and decisively refused. If it's not yours, don't covet it, otherwise, even if you eat it, you'll have to throw it up. I had consulted with a lawyer. Over the years, Oliver's business had grown bigger, but all this money was marital property. He secretly raised a young girl behind my back, and legally I could reclaim half of the assets. In short, I could squander this money as I pleased or donate it all to help the children in the mountainous areas who needed it. But I absolutely could not give it to Grace. After all, knowing someone like that is not good. I really dislike them. Seeing my firm refusal, Grace still wouldn't give up. Clearly, it was just a few oranges, yet she insisted on competing with me for them. So when Oliver showed up, she immediately switched to crying mode. "I just want to eat 2 oranges. You have so many, why can't you just give me 2? Her voice was slightly choked with tears, and Oliver hurried over. Upon seeing her crying, Oliver instinctively reached out to comfort her. But when he caught my gaze, he abruptly halted his hand. Then turned to me and said, "You have so many oranges already, why don't you give Grace a couple? This is what my grandparents bought for me. Why should I share?" I refused. Oliver frowned slightly, looking somewhat displeased. "It's just a few oranges. If you really want some, I can buy you a whole truck of them. But there's no need to be so selfish, it's just a few oranges." Just a few oranges, huh? Indeed, it's just a few oranges. But they are my oranges, given to me by my grandparents. Why should I give them to someone else? Especially that woman who tries to take my husband. Even though I don't want him anymore, I still refuse to share. Since you can buy a whole truck, then go buy a truck for Grace. Don't come coveting mine. They ruined my good mood early in the morning. The pain that had finally subsided began to flare up again. Last night, I suddenly had trouble breathing, my eyes felt hazy, and everything looked blurry. My doctor told me these are signs of deterioration, and I must be hospitalized. But I don't want to go. If I'm destined to die, I might as well take this time before death to see more of the scenery. Oliver seemed to be angered by my words, or perhaps Grace was crying too loudly. As he suddenly reached out to grab the oranges. When did you learn to be so stingy? It's just a few oranges. Grace is young, what's the harm in letting her have some? I pushed him hard, but his strength was too great. And he managed to snatch several oranges from my arms, shoving them all into Grace's hands. Grace held the oranges, giving me a challenging smile, looking extremely pleased with herself. Oliver. All the grievances I had been holding back erupted at once. I couldn't suppress my emotions anymore, my eyes turned red instantly, and I raised my hand to slap Oliver hard. The crisp sound of the slap echoed in the courtyard, shocking everyone. Seizing the moment when everyone was stunned, I rushed to reclaim my oranges from Grace's arms. Grace wouldn't let go, constantly hiding behind Oliver. One of the oranges fell to the ground, she didn't seem to notice. Or perhaps she did and did it on purpose. She stepped on the orange, causing its juice to splatter everywhere. Such good oranges, bought for me by my grandparents early this morning, were ruined just like that. Grace. This time, I didn't care about Oliver standing in front of me. I raised my hand and slapped Grace across the face. She tried to dodge, but my nails grazed her cheek perfectly, leaving a bright red mark that made her scream immediately. Ah, my face. Oliver, my face is ruined. Along with that, all the oranges she held were thrown to the ground. Grace. The moment Oliver saw the wound on her face, he looked extremely tense and heartbroken. Without thinking, he pushed me. I was standing on the steps, not very steady as it was. With that shove, I fell directly to the ground. Buddy was originally curled up in his little nest, sleeping. After hearing the commotion, he wagged his tail and hurried over to me. Seeing me sitting on the ground, he kept biting my clothes, trying to pull me up. Grace, it's okay, it's just a bruise. I'll take you to the hospital right now, it won't leave a scar. Don't be afraid, stop crying. But Oliver didn't even look at me. He quickly picked up the sobbing Grace and rushed out the door of the guest house, heading for the town hospital. I remained sitting on the ground, not because I didn't want to get up, but because a sudden sharp pain pierced my lower abdomen. It hurt so much that I almost bit my tongue to end it. Hearing the commotion, my grandparents came out of the house. When they saw me sitting on the ground, they hurried over to help me. But the pain under me was intense, and I could feel a warm flow coming out. I looked down and saw blood seeping through the white gauze skirt. That child, who was never meant to survive, had left even sooner than I had expected. I thought he would at least stay with me for a few more months, allowing me to feel the magic of our blood connection in my final days. But that push from Oliver made me lose the child entirely. Lying in the hospital bed, my grandmother made me chicken soup, but my stomach felt so nauseous that I could hardly swallow it. With the miscarriage, I could no longer hide the fact that I had late-stage stomach cancer. When my grandparents found out, they took turns coming to the hospital to keep me company, cursing Oliver while also throwing all his and Grace's luggage out of the guest house. Although my wife doesn't have much money, she still has some principles. I can't serve people like them. My grandmother sighed, wanting to say more, but my shattered phone rang at that moment. It was Oliver calling. As soon as I answered, he launched into a barrage of accusations. Miranda, you've really disappointed me. Grace just wanted to eat a few of your oranges. Did you really have to go that hard on her? She's just a young girl who just graduated from college, still in her flower bud years. You were so ruthless that you scratched her face and left a long blood mark. Get to the hospital right now and apologize to her properly, or else. Oliver rattled on, but I was feeling dizzy and unwell, so I directly interrupted him. I'm pregnant. Pregnant, and you still want to come what? You're pregnant? Oliver suddenly seemed to realize what I said, his voice rising sharply, uncertain as he asked again, Miranda, "Are you really pregnant?" I responded with a simple yes and added, "I was pregnant. But you pushed me for Grace, and the baby is gone." The first child that Oliver and I had eagerly awaited for 7 years died because of him. Oliver nearly ran to see me. His eyes were bloodshot, as if he didn't want to believe my words. Since entering the hospital room, he had kept his mouth shut, not saying a word. Perhaps he was waiting for this moment. My grandmother specifically repeated what the doctor had said in front of him: if the girl hadn't been pushed, the child would never have fallen. "Oliver, you've truly done a great job. You've killed your own child with your own hands. There's nothing more heart-wrenching than this." Oliver stood by the bed, wanting to reach out and touch my face, but I turned away, not wanting to look at him. "It's better that this child is gone. After all, an unwanted child would have a painful life." My voice was very soft, a kind of helplessness that came from extreme weakness. Oliver clenched his fists tightly at his sides, murmuring, "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were pregnant. If you had known, you wouldn't have pushed me, right?" I smiled at him, but as I did, tears began to fall, and then I slapped him hard. "Oliver, you truly disgust me." I put all my strength into that slap, but Oliver still stood there without moving, as if he was deliberately letting me vent my anger. So I didn't feel any pity and continued to slap him several times until my palms started to sting, then I finally stopped. Oliver remained silent, just watching me with eyes full of guilt. But it wasn't enough, this still wasn't enough. So when Grace made a scene in the hospital, threatening to jump off the building to demand recognition, everything escalated. At that time, Oliver was in the hospital taking care of me. Even though I repeatedly told him to leave, Oliver acted as if he couldn't hear me, allowing my hits, scolding, and accusations, still following medical advice to take care of me. For several days, he didn't even glance at Grace. That young, impulsive girl had started out with the sole purpose of making me aware of her existence, forcing Oliver to make a final choice between her and me. And now he was still guarding the hospital room, filled with guilt over my miscarriage. Grace couldn't hold back any longer. She climbed up to the rooftop, attempting to use this method to pressure Oliver. When the news of someone wanting to jump off the building spread, seeing Grace in someone's video, Oliver dropped the towel he had been twisting with a snap and immediately ran outside. I had lost count of how many times this was now. How many times? Had he chosen to leave without looking back because of Grace? Luckily, I no longer had any expectations. As someone on the brink of death, the only breath I was holding on to was to wait for this ending to arrive. So I secretly avoided the nurse's examination and followed the crowd to the rooftop. When I got up there, Grace was crying and throwing a tantrum, while Oliver stood nearby, calling out to her with worry in his eyes. "Come down first, can't we talk things over?" Grace shook her head. "No, you know what I want. I've been waiting for so long, I don't want to wait anymore." "Grace, why do you have to make things difficult for me?" Oliver looked in pain. He couldn't abandon the beautiful young Grace from 2 years ago, nor could he immediately cast aside the friendship he had built with me over the years. Moreover, he had just personally caused the death of his own child, and now he was in a state of deep pain and guilt. Once again, there was a struggle, and the other spectators on the rooftop were watching with great interest. Grace suddenly fixed her gaze on me, and in an instant, she became determined, lifting her foot to pretend she was about to jump down. Of course, she didn't intend to die. So Oliver easily caught her, pulling her back from the edge of the rooftop and holding her tightly in his arms. "Grace, please don't do anything stupid, okay?" Grace was also crying sadly, burying herself in his embrace, but her eyes were still on me. "Then tell me, do you love me?" Oliver hesitated for a moment. In front of everyone, whether it was out of sincerity or to calm Grace's emotions, he nodded. "Grace, I like you." With a loud slap, I pushed over a nearby stand, and the things on it flew out, landing squarely on Oliver's head. While it wouldn't cause him to bleed, it was painful enough. Just moments before, everyone had been immersed in this farce, and the noise I made was enough to draw all their eyes to my face. Even Oliver turned to look at me, his face instantly turning pale. "Miranda." I pushed through the crowd and slowly walked to the center of this drama. It was as if I had set up a makeshift stage, and I, the soon-to-be exiting supporting role, was about to play my final part. I raised my hand and without thinking, slapped Oliver. He didn't move, but Grace, feeling heartbroken, reached out to push me away. Miranda, how dare you hit Oliver? Oliver, however, stopped her, allowing me to slap him repeatedly. How dare you hit him? Ah! Grace shouted at me, but just as her voice fell, the slap that should have landed on Oliver's face ended up hitting Grace instead. How dare I hit him? Just because he's my husband, hugging you here like a scumbag? Why shouldn't I hit him? And you, a fresh college graduate, knowing full well he's married, still shamelessly coming over, you tell me, on what grounds? I spoke forcefully, ensuring all the spectators could hear me clearly. Even with countless phones raised behind me, I didn't feel ashamed. After all, throughout this relationship, I had never betrayed anyone. I hadn't done anything wrong. The one at fault was Oliver, who was clearly married but still cheated. The one at fault was Grace, who knew someone had a wife but still approached him. If anyone were to be drowned in spit, it could only be them, not me. I slowly walked up to Oliver, my face bearing a trace of a sorrowful smile, tears streaming down my cheeks. I had finally become a good actress, feigning shock at what I already knew. My thoughts were swirling, and my stomach was feeling increasingly uncomfortable. Oliver, why did you betray me? Why? As an orphan without parents, all my memories from childhood were filled with loneliness, which is why I fell in love with various novels, yearning for a love as perfect as that of the protagonists in romance stories. Until I met Oliver, we fell in love at first sight, promising to accompany each other for a lifetime. In the end, it still couldn't be realized. I looked at him, gripping his collar tightly. The next moment, the turmoil in my stomach erupted, and a wave of sweet, metallic nausea surged up. I forced out a mouthful of blood, and it splattered all over Oliver's face. My body could no longer hold up, everything in front of me started to blur, and I collapsed weakly to the ground. In the moment before my consciousness faded, I only heard Oliver's anxious shouts. But that was all. When I woke up again on the hospital bed, Oliver was sitting by my side, holding my hand tightly, his eyes bloodshot, looking extremely haggard. Miranda, you. He seemed hesitant, his eyes filled with guilt and regret, a tremendous feeling of remorse almost swallowing him whole. I expressionlessly pulled my hand away, finishing the words he couldn't say. Late-stage stomach cancer, about to die, are you very happy? He closed his eyes, his expression one of great pain. I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's really nothing much, it just hurts so much at night that I can't sleep for whole nights. Sometimes, everything suddenly goes black, and I can't see what's in front of me, feeling like I'm going blind. Or I could be standing perfectly fine, and suddenly faint, falling alone on the floor of my house, waking up in the middle of the night frozen and crawling up alone. I've experienced all of this by myself. While I was going through this, Oliver, where were you? I smiled at him, watching the pain and guilt in his eyes grow more intense, but I only felt a sense of relief. Oh, you were out on a date with your little lover. You said you were busy with work, so even when I was dying in pain, I didn't dare disturb you. But what about you? Oliver, when I was at my most painful moment, you should have been enjoying the moonlight with Grace, right? She's a great cook, pretty too, younger and more beautiful than me. I shouldn't have much longer to live. The child I finally managed to have has also been lost because of you. But it's okay, I'm about to die anyway. After I die, you can continue enjoying the moonlight with Grace, you can have more children with her. As for the dead child, I will be reborn with him, we will be a family, and you will no longer be a part of it. With every word I said, his face paled a little more until he finally covered his ears in pain. Don't say it. Miranda, I beg you, don't say it. Why not say it? Oliver, when you were rolling in bed with Grace, did you ever think about what I was doing at that moment? Isn't it too late to regret now? I grasped his wrist, refusing to let him escape, covering his ears, even forcing him to look into my eyes, so he could see the hatred lurking in my gaze. Oliver, why is it that I'm the one who has to die, not you? You're the one who cheated, the one who betrayed our relationship, so why is it that I'm the one who has to die? It's not fair, not at all fair. Oliver stayed by the bedside, unwilling to leave even a step. Grace came again. But this time, Oliver didn't even glance at her, he just stayed by my side. The guilt and self-reproach in his eyes were nearly overwhelming him, yet I desperately wanted to see if there was still any love left in them. Unfortunately, my vision began to darken and blur, and I couldn't see that ridiculous love clearly. Miranda, the weather is nice today. How about I take you for a walk? I was already in the late stages and wouldn't live much longer. On top of that, the miscarriage had nearly multiplied the harm to my body. Even getting out of bed for a few minutes felt unbearably uncomfortable. Oliver stayed beside me, even though I treated him like air, he still refused to leave. I didn't look at him and didn't want to get out of bed. Seeing that I wouldn't speak, Oliver's smile faded for a moment, but he quickly put on a cheerful face again. It's okay if you don't want to go out, I'll stay in the hospital room with you. Do you want an apple? Or something else? After saying that, he started peeling an apple by himself. He even cut it into bite-sized pieces, skewering each piece with a toothpick and sweetly presenting them to me. I still ignored him, treating him like air as if he didn't exist. Seeing that I wouldn't look at him, Oliver's expression grew sadder, his guilt and self-reproach nearly consuming him. He struggled to force a smile at me. It's okay if you don't like to eat, I'll stay here with you, always by your side. I picked up my phone, almost as a form of self-harm, and searched for the live stream replay. Watching the two of them entwined on screen and seeing Oliver's face growing paler at the side, I couldn't even tell if this was a punishment for him or for myself. Oliver, you're so filthy. I avoided his touch, my eyes filled with disgust and revulsion, which finally caused him to show a wounded expression. For several days, it was like this. Oliver could no longer suppress his emotions. I handed him the divorce agreement that I had prepared long ago. If you're still a decent person, then sign it. I had found a lawyer early on to settle our assets. Every penny that belonged to me had to remain mine. Oliver shook his head, refusing to sign no matter what. We're husband and wife. We promised to be together forever since college. We can't get divorced. Oliver, can you please stop disgusting me? My stomach churned, so unwell that I almost wanted to bite my tongue and end it all. You were entangled with another woman while I was sick, even bringing her in front of me to flaunt. Do you find this kind of cheating exciting? When you were doing all these things, did you ever think about the fact that we're husband and wife? Probably not. If he had even a shred of thought for me in his heart, he wouldn't have agreed to such a ridiculous request. So, in the end, he signed the divorce agreement. I added, before this, every penny you spend on Grace has to include half of mine. I don't care how you handle your money, but I will make sure to reclaim my share from her. I am not a kind person. Keeping those recordings and the live stream replay was just to seek revenge on those who had harmed me when I wanted to die. Whether it's Oliver or Grace, everyone should pay the price for their actions. In these days, I had completely lost my appetite, relying only on nutrition injections to sustain my life. I had already lost a significant amount of weight. At night when I slept, I secretly pinched my waist and found there wasn't much flesh left, and my chest had slimmed down to the point that my ribs were sticking out. I looked terrible. I didn't want anyone to see such an ugly version of me. So, while Oliver went out to buy something, I gritted my teeth, gathered all my strength, and quietly left the hospital. My grandparents visited me every day, taking turns. Afraid of worrying them, I left them a letter along with all my savings. Although the money in that card wasn't much, I had already entrusted my lawyer. Whatever property belonged to me, Grace would have to give back. All the money would be split in half. Half would be left for my grandparents, and half would be donated to impoverished students in the mountainous areas. It would be a blessing for me and my child. If I could have another life, I hope my child would be healthy, and I would be healthy too. And then, in that world, there would be no Oliver, no betrayal. There would only be love, complete love. Speaking of which, if Buddy knew I was dying, would he be very sad? No one would feed him little meat snacks anymore, and no one would go up the mountain with him to pick mushrooms. He would probably be upset, right? Miranda died, and no one knew where she passed away. She disappeared in the hospital, and Oliver searched frantically, nearly turning the entire Star City upside down, but he couldn't find any trace of her. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, leaving nothing behind. However, she had arranged for someone to deliver her ashes to the owner of an inn in the mountainous area of Star City a month and a half later. By the time Oliver learned this news, my grandparents had already buried the ashes. He knelt at the inn's entrance, only wanting to ask for a burial plot. But my grandparents refused to tell him, leaving him to kneel in the rain, allowing him to faint and wake up, only to continue kneeling and fainting again. Grandpa was somewhat soft-hearted, but Grandma held him back. Let him keep kneeling. If he has the ability, let him kneel to death outside. Let him go find Nuan Nuan and apologize himself. Oliver's eyes were filled with despair and pleading, let me see her, just once. Please, I beg you. Grandma still wouldn't give in. This selfish, heartless, and cold man only thought of all Miranda's goodness after she died. But she was already gone, no amount of guilt or self-reproach could change that. Such a person, if he were to appear before Miranda's grave, would only taint her path to reincarnation. Let him carry a lifetime of guilt with him. Living? Or living in a state worse than death. Grace knew Miranda was dead, and her first reaction was happiness. She liked Oliver. They first met on their university campus when he was a senior in her department, invited back to give a speech at their alma mater. From that one glance, she fell for him at first sight. So she intentionally created many chance encounters, eventually making this senior remember her face. After spending a long time by his side, on that night fueled by alcohol, Grace finally got what she wanted. At first, Oliver was always indifferent toward her. But because of that night, to avoid being found out by Oliver's wife, she deliberately manipulated the situation, getting him to meet her time and again. Some things, once started, will lead to more. Grace watched as Oliver's gaze toward her gradually softened from its initial coldness to a hint of affection. She knew she was succeeding. She liked the mature, charming man, enjoyed his lavish spending on her, and cherished every moment they spent together. But he had a wife, and she was destined to be a secret mistress. She was unwilling to accept this, so she wanted to take her place. Little did she expect that Miranda would be diagnosed with cancer. She hadn't even had the chance to do anything before Miranda was gone. Grace approached Oliver with a joyful heart, suppressing the joy within her, and pinched the flesh of her thigh to squeeze out a few tears. Sister Miranda is gone. I know you're sad, but you still have me. Last time was an accident. Although I didn't conceive your child, I'm still young, and we will have our chance. Oliver, let me take care of you from now on, okay? She thought Oliver would surely find her understanding, even though he was sad about his wife's death at that moment. She believed there would come a day when he would be touched by her tenderness. But she quickly realized she was wrong. Oliver, the man she thought was emotionally fickle, was now madly searching for Miranda's grave all over the country after her death. He said, in my life, I have only one wife, and that's Miranda. Grace laughed in anger, pointing to the strawberry mark on her neck that had yet to fade. Her eyes were filled with sarcasm. If your love were so steadfast, you wouldn't be easily attracted to me. Oliver, admit it, you're just garbage, unstable garbage. Oliver fell silent. He thought Grace's words didn't seem wrong. He truly was that garbage. He loved Miranda deeply but was easily drawn to others, gradually falling into an abyss, ultimately causing the death of his wife. Was a person like him really deserving of life? Oliver looked at his hands, and for some reason, he felt as if they were covered in blood, his child's blood, the blood of the child he had killed with his own hands. Oliver fell ill and was hospitalized. His condition wasn't good either. He was often disoriented and kept saying his hands were covered in hot blood. The doctor wouldn't allow him to leave the hospital, and Oliver shouted in the ward that he needed to find his wife. However, before Miranda passed away, She had already made those films and videos public. Coupled with the earlier live broadcast, many people now knew that Oliver had cheated. He had caused the death of his child and his wife. A person like him would be despised wherever he went. And Grace, over this past year, had squandered too much money that didn't belong to her. Now a lawsuit was thrust upon her, forcing her to return all that money. Miranda had also sent those films to her company. Grace lost her job and sold off all her designer bags and jewelry, but still couldn't make up for the shortfall. She wanted to ask Oliver for help, but the current Oliver was in a mad state and even seemed to not recognize people. Still, Grace held on to a glimmer of hope and secretly snuck into the hospital to find Oliver. That day, Oliver was extremely emotional, constantly saying he wanted to find Miranda. So when he saw Grace, he mistook her for someone else. He grabbed her hand and went to the rooftop. Grace thought he still had feelings for her. She was so moved she shed tears. Just as she wanted to say something to him, she saw Oliver embrace her. And then the two of them fell off the rooftop together. Grace was filled with fear. She truly loved Oliver, but in the end, she loved her own life even more. She didn't want to die. But it was too late. As they plummeted, Oliver seemed to suddenly regain consciousness. He stared expressionlessly at Grace. "We're both sinners, it's time to atone." The sound of two heavy objects hitting the ground echoed, and at that moment, 2 more lives vanished from this world. Grandma lied, she never buried Miranda's ashes. Instead, she patiently waited for Oliver to die before returning to the countryside with Grandpa. The scenery there was beautiful, with clear mountains and rivers, and a vast flower sea, just as Miranda liked. Miranda left them a large sum of retirement money, but Grandma didn't keep a penny, she donated it all. Grandpa and Grandma buried Miranda not far from their old home. There, in a sea of flowers, Miranda sleeps. Buddy comes every day, carrying a bouquet to Miranda's grave, then wags his tail and lies there all day long. Grandma also loved to make all sorts of delicious food to accompany Miranda. She often thought that such a gentle and kind girl shouldn't have such a short life. Grandma sighed, slowly looking up at the sky, as if talking to herself, "This life is too bitter, let the next life be a little sweeter. It shouldn't be so short, if only I could do it all over again." Time keeps flowing, perhaps in some space-time, there truly could be a chance for a redo. In that space-time, Miranda would have the healthiest body. She would live a long life, filled with happiness.